Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
And ghouls, it's your old pal Scythe Part 2 here for another episode of Ghouly Gentlemen. Joining me today is a ghost for fun, because that's what he changed his Twitter name to, and it's much better than what I came up with.
I am superior.
Hi, Alfie.
Hey Ian, how's it going? It's spooky times now, spooky voices.
Yeah, you're like evil, deep voice is actually pretty good. So we're here for another horror movie review, and Alfie's the admitted non-horror fan here, so I was really interested to see what he'd end up picking. And what'd you go with, Alfie?
I picked Behind the Mask, the tale of Leslie Vernon. The legend of Leslie Vernon. What are those?
The Rise of Leslie Vernon, I believe.
There we go, I was wrong on both fronts.
There we go. As you always are. So yeah, I'd never heard of this. So my usual question is, what made you want to pick this? But my question is, when the hell did you hear about this?
So on Twitter, I follow a YouTuber who's very into videos called Jack's Blade. He does a lot of like anime workout videos, and he's a big horror fan. And he mentioned in passing, I think it might have been a couple of weeks ago, that he's a really big fan of this movie and he thinks it's underrated. And I was like, oh, okay, I normally like his taste. I think that's something. And I was actively searching for something that I didn't want you to have seen. So the moment they said it was underrated, I was like, okay, let's give this a shot. And the premise alone, from what I did get from like a summary, I was like, oh, this might be up my alley.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I wasn't sure what to expect. I was like maybe looking a little like disappointed, honestly, in the very beginning, because I was like, oh, so he picked like a goofy comedy parody of like horror movie or whatever. And it's definitely got elements of that, where it's poking fun, at the very least, at a lot of the tropes in horror, in particular slasher horror. But it goes a bit deeper than that. It has that level of humor where you can only make fun of it on that level if you truly love it. And what I found very impressive here was, while that ha ha ha, isn't this so weird and quirky stuff is there, it as the movie goes on, it peels away very quickly, and by the time you're in the last act, it's not funny anymore. No, it doesn't have that sense of ha ha, wink wink, nudge nudge. It's just a fucking scary ass horror movie at that point. And so I was very impressed by it.
Yeah, I'm happy it turned out that way, because, again, just on the basic idea of this being a mockumentary horror movie where a news crew goes and follows the life of someone who wants to become the next big serial killer, slasher movie villain. In the same vein as, very deliberately, here's your very own suck at cinematic universe. Everything is canon to this movie, with Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, Chucky. Everyone exists in this, and they're all known, and they're all accepted as having things that exist here. And here is an on-the-ground perspective of someone who wants to rise to that level. Just that alone, I was like, oh, this could be a fun watch. that very idea of just, oh, this will probably be more tongue-in-cheek. And while I definitely think those parts, I was also impressed and kind of relieved, again, like you said, that this did still fit the term of being a horror movie, that it didn't poke fun of the genre in a way that was mean-spirited. It was here's very much in the same vein as Trick or Treat, where this is made from people who horror films and so can take jabs at themselves, but not in the way when those things are bad, because then they use them themselves.
Yeah, that was something I was really impressed by, and like, it's got an interpretation that I've kind of like heard around the edges before, but I've never quite bought. Of like why women are, and like why the virgin and all that stuff is the like object of desire in horror and all this stuff. Why the killer's always after the pure virgin girl and all that. And like I've heard that interpretation before. I think like Cabin in the Woods is a film very much in the same vein as this, even though it came out like years later. It tries to make that point too, that like the tropey characters of horror films serve a very particular, very primal purpose, and they build into something. I've heard that interpretation. I don't know if I've ever quite bought it, but this movie sells it, I think, harder than anything before it or since, with Cabin in the Woods, because as much as I like Cabin in the Woods, it's almost too big, and it's almost too grand and a little too meta, whereas this feels just so much more grounded and seems to make a lot of the same points, and I think it really helps that it gets to... It doesn't have to worry so much about the fake out, because you still get a fake out, you still get a reveal, and it gets to spend more time just talking about the tropes and kind of getting into the how, the why, and everything behind those tropes, you know?
It's something where you have a character who isn't necessarily even a parody of like slasher villains in like Leslie Vernon. He's just a straight slasher villain. Played completely, obviously he's got funny moments here and he's got things, but especially when you get to the end, he is 100% in that mold. There's no kind of like, he's kind of a goof and so we're supposed to laugh at him, look how ineffective this would be in real life kind of thing. It's just like, no. But because he's competent, you actually get to sit down and he tells you how he does his things. And when you understand it, it almost makes some of them more scarier, because it puts it in that way where there is no supernatural element. Preparation and planning and knowing human behavior and all of that. And I think that's a really interesting way to look at like horror movies in general, because you can take obviously Freddy Krueger and even the Halloween movies when they quickly went to supernatural. There's less of a needed for why they can do the things they can do, but when you actually get this and they tell you how and give you an explanation in case you were looking for that, while also focusing on the tropes like the Virgin and the ensemble cast, as he calls them, of like the other people you need to thin the herd. I thought it was all really interesting and gave me, as kind of a horror noob, more of an appreciation. Because I think everyone on the planet has heard of those. Everyone knows of them. Down on them or you embrace them as a fan. Just being able to see them explored in some way is really interesting to me. And I'm glad I got to see this do that, because I wasn't ever aware that there was more meat to that, or there could be.
Yeah, like it's one of those things where you just assume, oh yeah, sure, the girl has got to be a virgin because then it's like so intimate and it creates this like very selfish, very self-serving hero narrative and all that stuff, and like the argument presented here that no, the virgin is is this like moment of empowerment, moment of rebirth, and you know the big, long, strong weapon is the symbol of taking that empowerment from a man and stuff. I was like, it's kind of crazy, it's kind of nuts, so it's kind of silly, but there is something to that argument at least, and this movie probably gives you the best case scenario for it, right?
It's one of those things where the idea presented without just showing. They didn't just talk about the tropes and then just never follow them up, because this could almost be seen as like two movies if you really wanted to do it, because there is like a dramatic tonal shift. But I do feel like having that setup of this is why I do what I do, this is the journey I want this person to go on, the survivor girl concept is just really fascinating. And then you get into the end when the main female is brought into that Taylor, I think her name is she's brought into that mold, and she has to go through it. Really, really interesting, because you're kind of showing that this can work as a storytelling device. You're not just saying, oh, this can work in other movies. It can, but we're going to make it work in our movie as well.
Mm-hmm. No, it displays a really good understanding of why this trope is so used. Like, it is 100% a trope. It is 100% overused, and so it does feel refreshing when you don't see that trope applied, right? But this gives you a really good argument for why that trope works as well as it does. It is to horror what the magical object is to fantasy, what the overwhelming threat is to action, what the smoking gun murder mystery is to drama, you know? It's like, yeah, it's a card that gets played all the time, but it's because it's such a particular thing that can work so very well and tells just this very, very true, emotionally true story when done correctly and when not done disrespectfully. So that was something I was really impressed by. I didn't expect this movie to make such a strong argument for that trope, and it really does, which was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Something I want to talk about a bit negative on that reveal, and I feel bad. We've only talked about the end of the movie so far, and we're only like 15 minutes in, or less than that even.
Spoilers!
Right.
We spoiled the end of this movie.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't talk about the end of this movie, you are not talking about this movie. But like, one thing that I thought was a bit weak in regards to all that trope stuff is she's given all the knowledge she needs. He's given her everything she needs to know about this, and her attempts to subvert his plans are almost laughable. And I do mean that not really to the movie's credit. Almost like way too incompetent, you know? Because just when she gets that moment of, no, we can't just let this happen kind of thing, and I love that she uses the exact wording that he said she would use. We can't just stand around and let this happen. It's trying to think how to say it. Like, her attempts feel so textbook still, when I feel like the setup should indicate that she should be trying to outthink him, or she should have more sense than to play into his hand as well as she does. And maybe that could have been turned on its head yet again, and he could have, planned for the plan, you know? Because, like, the moment that stood out to me is when she goes into the shed and picks up the axe, and, like, he legit told her, all the obvious weapons I've sabotaged. You know? Like, that's the moment for me where I'm like, really? You grabbed the axe? Like, it works in every other movie when they grab the big, long object, and of course it breaks. It's the trope. but the fact that she has the knowledge that so much is set up against her, not just by accident but by design, it seemed surprising to me that they let her fall so hard into that particular moment. And there were a bunch of other little things like that once things started going.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. I do feel like, although I appreciate the film taking this turn, I do feel the first half is written stronger. I feel like that's comfortable. At least that's why I found more entertaining, I should say. Because once it did just become a straight horror movie, that, but it wasn't as interesting to watch, especially when the characters who have had all the blueprints of horror movies spelled out to them basically for the rest of the runtime, still falling into those traps. I feel like is a weak point which you maybe could have used to subvert more. I think my thing, and maybe I can use this as like to play devil's advocate, is at least I feel like because she knows going in that his entire plan that's laid out is for her to win. And if you follow these steps, you will beat me. I feel like, and he is intentionally like he's so earnest about that, and the performance for Leslie is fantastic. He's so adamant of wanting to be beat. One girl, everyone else is fucked. But if you follow this, you will win and you will get out alive. I can totally understand when everything's gone to shit. She's just like, okay, I'll play.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those things where
I guess that's a. Go ahead.
Go ahead. There's a bit of lag going on here, so forgive that. But yeah,
a bit of lag and like you cut out every so often. Sorry, folks.
My apologies. But so just in general with the idea that she goes on this journey to basically have the blueprint of how to beat him because he wants to lose, works. But I do think maybe before you got to this part, you could have had a moment where, because again, he's trying to put her, his whole reason why he's doing this, and like the older slasher villain explains this is they're there to nurture good. They're there to be these irredeemable evils, not for the hell of it, but because in their mind they're good. They're creating heroes. So the idea that she becomes a hero through following his plan is okay, but maybe a stronger follows it up to a point, and then near like the end game, like he mentions like the apple crusher. If she had found like another way that he didn't even think of to then fully beat him, and then he gives that line of "I knew you could do it" kind of thing, like of how proud he is of her, I think that would have played even better. Is like she not only surpassed his expectations, she's like transcended that. And I think that would have been really, you had moments like that here and there to seed it of like, oh, she's competent, and then you end with that, and it would have been a more killer moment, I feel.
Sorry folks, did a little technical stuff there. No, I think you're right. I think that it does lay a lot of groundwork for that stuff, and it's really good. Again, it's just when the movie does so much to like, here's the trick, it ruins suspension of disbelief a little bit when you see people fall into it, and it starts to feel less like, oh, this guy's such a genius about understanding human behavior, and more like he's got the script on his side. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like that's where I would kind of land. I'm somewhere in the middle on some of those choices. What I think would have been maybe a cooler thing is if everything she tried to do to outmaneuver him felt more genuine. Because like some of, you know, when she goes, oh, okay, we're gonna go and we're gonna get Kelly right away. I'm like, okay, that feels like a pretty good choice. No, don't go into the basement. He's using that to like all that felt pretty strong. The things that felt like less good were like, oh, let's go to the cars now. Well, you should have gone to the car much earlier. You know, like that's the thing for me is it should have been like get in the car, go right away. And it just it lasted a little too long, and so like when they do finally get to the van, it feels like they've just given him too much time, And that moment, I think, would have played a lot better if they went to the van right away and immediately were outfoxed, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I was that just kind of lingered for me, and was definitely something I thought about.
No,
But yeah, we have mainly only talked about the end of the movie, so let's go ahead and back up and talk about the funny bits, you know?
The ha-has. I think my, in general, first one the one that sticks out to me the most, and the one I kind of appreciate the most, is the cardio thing.
Yes.
You gotta make it look like you're walking.
A lot of cardio.
And they're hauling ass over
that
there.
was really good. That was really good. The fucking bit about the turtles, like, only pets that I can eat. I was like, what is this movie? Oh my god, that shit got me so much. Because, like, the early bits of this, it's not looking like it's going to be an actual horror movie at all. Especially when, like, you start to get these scene breaks and stuff, like when his Ahab shows up. Like, that felt so goddamn corny, and, like, I don't mean to be mean, because I do think it was intentional. The monster design, like, the mask design, looks like shit. It looks really fucking dumb. Like, when you told me we were reviewing this, and I was, like, looking up, you know, totally legal ways to watch it, I kept seeing the, like, screen grabs and thumbnails from it and stuff, and I'm like, God, that's a stupid fucking killer look. Fucking frowny face, blue mask. It looked dumb as shit, but I think that's kind of the point, is fucking Michael Myers is wearing an inside-out William Shatner mask. That's dumb as shit too, but it's become iconic over time, and I think that's what they're kind of going for.
Mm-hmm. It's one of those...
So, like, shit like that really got to me.
Yeah, it's one of those where the idea of the scene cuts, the when he's putting makeup on, and he's just talking about how, like, he puts on the boxers thing because it stops you get hit, you don't swell up, and just the ideas of everything about his uniform, although it's not the greatest design in the world, it does make sense, and it's living up to a specific idea he's trying to get across. I also find it really...
I thought that was really good.
Really funny detail about the turtles, that in his lore, he's eaten alive by turtles, and then he's like, oh, I only keep pets I can eat with the turtles. He's getting fucking revenge on him.
One of the things I really liked was that the fucking lore is so dumb and not important at all, and, like, he fully admits that, and he goes, oh no, it's just all this made up shit that I adopted and included as part of my lore. Like, it's like, do you know Freddy Krueger's lore, his origin?
Like he's a pedophile that got burned alive?
No, not that part. That part too, but, like, Freddy Krueger's lore gets so fucking deep. His mother was working in an insane asylum run out of a convent, and she was a nun, and one night she was feeding the men in the insane cell because they didn't get individual cells. It was just like 40 guys all in one room together, and she's feeding them, and then they locked her in the cell and forgot about her over the weekend. And when they found her, she'd been raped almost to the point of death by every madman in the cell. And 9 months, and since she was a nun in a Catholic convent, she had to have the baby. And so Freddy Krueger is the bastard child of 1,000 madmen.
Jesus.
And it's like, it's so fucking stupid though, and it doesn't make any sense, but it's like that fucking lore thing, and that's exactly what, like, Leslie's Vernon's thing is like, oh yeah, I was killed as a child and now I'm back, but I can't really be seen, like, mowing the lawn, you know? Oh god. But I could be seen walking around the place, fucking sabotaging the tree branches. That's fine.
You can put restraining orders on his Ahab.
Right? Like, it's so out of nowhere that a lot of that stuff comes up. And I thought that was really clever. Because on the surface, you're just like, yeah, they're making a jab at it. But at the same time, all that shit is entirely there for the characters in the movie, less so than for the audience, I find. And so it's adding to everything that he's doing. And I thought it was really cool, like, when he gets busted halfway through the movie, he's like, yeah, that's not even my fucking real name. Thought that shit was really good.
Mm-hmm. One thing I want to talk about, because I thought it was an interesting choice, I'm worried of what your read on it is the older couple who like kind of like view him as like a son figure.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about them? Like the retired slasher villain from before the Jason Freddy era, who's
before the, yeah. I don't know. Like, that was one of the weirder parts, especially because like once you know the twist, their scenes are recontextualized in a really interesting way. In particular, the wife.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a couple moments where you're like, oh, maybe, but then like the last scene they have, it's a pretty hard reveal that she was clearly the survivor girl for that guy at one point, you know? That was really interesting to me, and I was like, I wanted more lore behind them and what the hell that relationship was. Because the second you got that moment, it's like, well, how did that go? Because, I don't know, we were just talking about Hannibal Lecter last week, too. There are moments where, like, this kind of relationship is hinted at between these characters. Particularly, again, Freddy Krueger is the one I know the best, but Freddy and Nancy are, like, kind of hinted at to have, like, this weird, like, romance kind of thing almost in a very creepy way. Like, in one of the movies, like, Freddy's always trying to sleep with her because he's got that whole pedophile background thing. And in one of the movies, there's, like, the dream sequence moment where, like, I'm trying to remember exactly how it works. Freddy, like, comes out of her. Like, it's such a weird effect to especially see the behind the scenes of it. They got an actor who had no legs for this effect of Freddy Krueger crawling out of Nancy. And so it's like this really weird kind of trippy moment. So I guess it's kind of adding into or egging on that particular interpretation of the slasher and the survivor girl, which is kind of a cool move. I don't know. So much of the movie is recontextualized by the end of it. I feel I'd almost have to watch it a second time to have a really strong opinion on them, you know?
Yeah, I can feel you there. Mostly I just thought it was really interesting that although this movie has quite a short, fast pace to it, there was a lot of lore delivered mainly through them about, like, okay, what does a world where all of these things exist in look like? And these are the people, like, the retired age from it. And the idea that eventually, through God knows how, the survivor girl ends up being in a quite happy, like, lovey, like, you did that to me, honey, like, elbow nudging relationship with, like, the slasher villain is such a weird, bizarre idea to me that I kind of, again, like Hannibal Lecter, like Joker Harley, it's this twisted, really weird idea where, like, they seem happy. Like, she seems fine with everything. Like, she's...
You know, they just... Go ahead.
Oh yeah,
go
she
ahead.
she seems fine with everything, and like especially once you know that Taylor is his survivor girl, and he's been planning that from the start, and it's not the other girl, and I'm assuming they're in on it as well. Their interactions where they're like, "Oh, so proud of you," and like that, it almost feels like you're bringing your girlfriend home to meet your parents for the first time. But it's just, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna try and kill all her friends, but she's gonna kill me at the end, and it's how we first met, kind of thing. I think that's such a weird, really funny, really twisted, but really interesting take on that dynamic.
No, definitely, and like that stuff's really interesting to see because like she has that moment where she goes, so like if one of us wanted to get away from you, what would we do? And he gives her like the worst advice. Like, what about staying together? Oh, you could try to fight us, but it's not gonna work out for you. You should just run. Just pick a spot on the horizon and run. And the guy that tries to do that, he just gets taken out because the other guy's faster. Um, that's a really like kind of bitter moment when you look back on it, that they're in on it and they know that this girl's like about to have the worst night of her life kind of thing, you know?
See, I had a different read on that.
So I okay.
Because how I took that is because he very specifically mentions, don't look back. Just run till the horizon and don't stop running until daytime. And legit, I think that's good advice. Because the guy keeps stopping, he turns around to look at him, and that gives him the chance to get the jump on him. And also he was like a heftier guy, so he's not that fast comparatively. I think the idea that if she did was like, okay, everyone, the cars don't work, let's all group together, even if we don't group, just everyone run and just don't stop running. That would work. I legit think, like in most horror movies as well, it's the turn the back that I think is the cinch, because that's the trope, right? Is you turn your back, you turn again, and he's in front of you. If you never give him that chance to get the jump on you, you're fine. So I think
I guess that's a good point.
I think he was legit giving her like, no, this is, if you want to subvert all the tropes and just survive, this is how you do it. But you're not gonna, are you? Because you want to save your friends.
Okay, I guess that makes more sense then. I will say that like the wife's advice seems almost counterintuitive, right? Where she's like, well, don't hang out with any virgins, and if you do, get someone in her pants, because when they have that moment of like, what's he gonna do when he finds out Kelly isn't a virgin? Kill all of us so that it doesn't get out? And I'm like, yeah, that like I don't think if Taylor suddenly sleeps with one of the guys there or something, it's gonna like that he's gonna fucking come out. Fucking really, Taylor? You ruined this for me.
I mean,
and he's just gonna give up. Like
if it was her that did that, maybe. If they wanted to go for that tone, he didn't because again, he didn't give a shit about that other girl to begin with.
Yeah, she's the fake out. But like I think they make the point that it's not really gonna work that way. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe the couple's advice is 100% sincere and that's just the way to do things. Man, I could have really used that knowledge in high school, and this movie came out in 2006. I could have used that perfectly. But Ian, I'm a virgin. I my beliefs, and been like, listen, if we're ever in a horror movie situation, I'm doing you a favor right now.
I'm getting you off the killer list.
I know, exactly. We're not gonna hang out with any virgins, and then we'll be fine. Just, really, come on. Give me some respect here. I'm saving your life. Oh, okay.
I watched Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon. Have you?
I mean, no lie. High school Ian was enough of a fucking dickhead to probably have legitimately tried it. Oh man. So no, I don't know. The old couple scene, and maybe you're right. Maybe I'd completely have a different read on it. I really took their advice as like, oh no, do all these things that you're not supposed to do. But maybe you're right. Maybe their advice is 100% on point. I gotta go back and really think about that scene again. And that's the symptom of a great horror movie, especially one that's like so trope dependent like this, is when you just want to go watch it again and get more involved in it. I always talk about that. I was just talking about it last week with Trick or Treat. Mark of a great movie is when you can go back and watch it again and notice completely different things, you know?
Mm-hmm. Especially for seasonal movies like this.
110%. So I want to talk about one scene in particular that I find really interesting, especially in the context of where the plot twist happens here. And that's the scene with Leslie and Taylor after she disobeyed him and tried to talk to Kelly.
Yeah. With the
Yeah.
the very weird, scary, the first kind of reveal you get of this guy is like a killer.
Because before that, it's all like, he literally kills someone before that, and this is the scariest he's gotten so far in the movie, right? That's a really interesting kind of position you get there, because just, man, is he so intimidating in that moment. And the context of like in the moment, it just seems like, well, he's really mad because Taylor's gonna ruin this thing that he cares about, and so he almost wants to kill her in that moment. But then you realize he's got this perfect opportunity to kill this girl that he's supposed to want to kill, and really that's not it. And so he's got to like kind of temper that, because he's supposed to have the desire, he's supposed to want to attempt to do it, and here he's got the opportunity, but she's not ready yet, so he has to like pull himself back. And I thought that was really interesting.
That's a really good read on that. I hadn't even thought about it to that extent, but you're totally right with the knowledge of she's his goal this entire time. He's been following her before the movie even starts and set up this whole thing because he knew this would happen. And she gets so close to, probably if she just told Ahab and everything, all her friends would have still been alive, and it was not actually Ahab. We're just going to call him that because it's fucking cool-ass moniker for, like, the hero doctor character. So...
Yeah. I also thought it was really cool they got Freddy Krueger in the movie.
Yeah, Robert Englund.
Yeah.
I don't
That was
know
neat.
his name, but the guy who plays the old slasher villain is also a horror icon. I was just checking the Wikipedia.
Oh, really?
And he's who got Robert Englund to join the project, because he was like, oh, hey, this is really reverential to, like, our stuff. Come, you should join us, and you should be on this. Because this was a very low budget. So Robert Englund was, like, a big pull.
Definitely. Does the wiki or anything say who he was playing? Like who that guy is?
Yeah, so apparently he's one of the... He's a slasher villain from, like... I can't remember the movie, but it was like a couple of movies from, like, the 50s, 60s, where, like, just everyone dies. It's
Okay.
one of those things where he is actually meant to be a character. The director said it, but off the top of my head, and again, I don't know horror lore enough to be able to say who that is. I'm sure a quick Google could help you find that, but he is actually meant to be someone.
Okay. No, I mean, it is a really cool pull. When I saw Robert Englund in the credits, I'm like, okay, he's obviously going to be older because this is look like mid-2000s. And at first, when they dig the dude up, I was like, oh shit, is that Robert Englund? That's so cool. And then eventually you get the Ahab, I'm like, oh no, that's definitely him. Because it's hard to, like, place the face a little bit at first. But man, that was so cool that they got Robert Englund in it. And yeah, the Ahab. Fucking Ahab is such a good term for that trope. I never would have thought of that, because that's the fucking doctor in Halloween. That's fucking everything, man. That shit's all over the place.
It's Van Helsing.
Yeah, Van Helsing is pretty much the root of it for modern horror, at least, I guess. And kind of always have, like, the monster fighter or something. Going back, but Van Helsing was really early on what's kind of defining that trope.
Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where we get the ideas of these tropes being pulled up, and like I said, they are executed quite well. But I also, although the scene afterwards, like you get the scene of like in the library, where it's your first kind of attempt at, we're not using the found footage style, because it swaps back and forth, which is quite interesting. We're going to shoot this like it is a horror movie, albeit quite a cheesy one in this scene. And then he gets away, and then it immediately like hard cuts to them like outside camera, and I was like, whoa, we did it, oh my god. Like that's, I really like that scene, because that's such a, it's so fucked up. Like they're like that, because again, Taylor's meant to be and Todd and everyone else are meant to be like, they're going for like a very, already the journalistic integrity is quite askew here, but you can tell they're like desperate for like a story, and they're like not very good at it and everything, so the first thing that came into their lap, they jumped on it. So the fact that they're being like brought into this world of just like, oh yeah, we just saw him kill a guy, kill an old lady, but fuck it, man, we got an Ahab and he's really happy about this, and we got such a buzz from it, whoa. And then like even the scene earlier where like he tricks her with the door, and he goes into in-depth explanation of like how they get the trope of standing in the bushes, door slams, he's gone. Like I really like that. And then their reactions afterwards when they're so proud of it, like, how did you do that, man? That was so awesome, bro. It really gave it a sense of like, it's funny to imagine, but I can totally picture it in my head. Freddy Krueger is 100% so pleased with himself after moments like that. He's doing this exact same thing. Like Jason Voorhees, I am 100%. He's going to his mum's head and he's like, oh, I fucking just did this great fucking kill. You shouldn't believe this. This is crazy. Like that is just canon now. That all, when you don't see them on screen, they're off screen freaking out, so proud of themselves.
Right. Like, and some of the more ingeniousness of it all kind of cracked me up. Like, again, the fucking brick with fishing line, and you can't even see it. They're like, yeah, no, that makes a lot of fucking sense, because if I'm, like, scared out of my fucking mind in the middle of the dark alleyway and the door is just slammed, I'm not really going to take the time to investigate that shit. I'm going to get the fuck out. And it's just, I don't know, it's so good how it all kind of comes together, you know? Mm-hmm. And yeah, the reactions of it. I will say, yeah, like, one of the things that it's probably the biggest suspension of disbelief thing is that they're all like, all right, we're going to hang out with a serial killer and watch him kill people and film it. You'd go to jail as an accessory at the very least. Have you ever released that? How do you think this is going to go? Mm-hmm. Did you expect him to just not do it?
I think they're very lucky.
Like that's one of the things is
that everyone dies at the end. There's no witnesses.
I don't know. Taylor's probably going to jail. She's probably gonna be like she's gonna have to answer some questions for the police, and then she's gonna like probably be too distraught to not think to mention, oh, I was making a movie filming this serial killer guy, and then it turns out he was trying to kill me the whole time. I'm pretty sure she's going to jail. I mean, maybe not. Maybe she just leaves and burns all the footage. That's certainly doable. I'm just saying.
Could be a way. It leaves it open. Leaves it quite vague.
Yeah. Now, this, of course, ends with sequel bait, as any good slasher film should. And to the best of my knowledge, they've never done a sequel to this.
No.
Here's a question, though. No, you don't think they should?
No, again,
no,
like,
they just haven't made a sequel.
Yeah. I was answering your question of have they made a sequel to this?
I'm sorry, No. Okay. Do you think they should?
I'd be down for it. Is there still nothing there? Oh my god, I'd be down with it if they did go for this, because there has been talk of, well, talk I say, it's the same with Trick or Treat. The director said something on Wikipedia. So in 2017, he said this, and I guess this is just his pitch for the premise, and I'm curious to see what you think of this. So they had a script, and obviously with how long things like this take, it's taken a while for that script to get like approved and everything. But by the time they were happy with it and everything was ready, they're already in, like, this was like 2017 when this was said, and it would have been heavy focused on the torture porn genre of like Saw films. And they're like, the problem we're feeling of making this now is all the references and stuff will immediately feel dated, but we think it's a really interesting thing to talk about that era of horror, so we're considering doing it. So I don't know how you feel about them exploring that with maybe with Leslie, or a different character.
Well, like, I think that I see the point of, like, oh, we're kind of past the torture porn era, but at the same time, this film was made in 2006. We were kind of past the slasher genre, you know? Like, we were doing a fan film review last week where we were talking about a Friday the 13th fan film, and we're like, yeah, you know, fucking, it's just another Friday the 13th movie where Jason goes around Camp Crystal Lake and kills a bunch of people. We're kind of done with it. We're kind of over it. It's kind of been done. Thank you. Goodbye. And we had to start getting ridiculous with it. We're like, Jason goes to space and Jason goes to hell, to make the character kind of interesting, and he almost became a parody of himself. You know, by the time of this film's release, this film's making in 2006, we were done with the slasher genre. We were firmly in the torture porn era at that point, but we were done with slasher horror movies. To make something 10 years later, I guess I see the argument that it's dated, but, like, I think given that if it was to be so reverential, or if it was to be very, what's a good antonym for reverential? Disparaging?
Yeah.
If it wanted to be disparaging of the torture porn genre, that could also be interesting. Like, even in whichever direction it goes, whichever direction it comes down on, whether it's like Leslie realizing, oh man, I grew up idolizing the slashers, but I really should have been getting, I realized I was doing too much to continue an old form. I should have been evolving, and so this is the thing I'm really into now. I've evolved as a killer. Like, that could be really interesting. Or, man, these new guys are just way too much into this one thing, and they're not embracing the art of this side of things. Whichever direction you take the Leslie character in at that point, I think it could be interesting. I think there's a point to be made, even though torture porn has kind of been there, done that, at this point in horror. We're in a weird kind of meta era of horror, which is kind of something interesting and worth talking about.
Yeah, maybe, again, it would probably feel right at home there, because, again, this tone was so meta, and even, it's still fresh enough in people's minds where, like, Saw's just a term everyone knows, even if no one's seen the films, you can just understand it, so I'm pretty sure the jokes would still land. Like, I think there's almost even more comedy potential if you still want to keep, like, the found footage style of, okay, how the fuck do we set up these traps? Like, that fits in so well of he's already got, like, the traps planned around the farm, but now he has to make, like, escape rooms.
Fucking, I fucking got to the point where I hated the Saw movies, but, like, there's a major plot point in one of the Saw movies that revolves around Jigsaw being an engineer, and he's like, because one of the Saw movies has a guy try to be a copycat Saw to cover up one of his own murders, and so he's like, your planning was pristine, your imitation perfect, but you use cheap materials. This kind of steel warps too quickly and isn't right for the job. And I'm just like, fucking Jigsaw, like, goddamn, cut the guy some slack. Not everyone can have a goddamn engineering degree in torture devices. Okay? Get the fuck out of here. One of my favorite things, and just because Jigsaw came out, I got really into The West Wing at one point, and looking back, it's actually kind of a problematic ass show. But like, that was like kind of the series for, oh shit, I know that actor in like absolutely nothing roles. And so there's an episode of The West Wing where like the president walks into the Oval Office because he's got a meeting with one of the general commander, blah blah blah, military terms. And the guy playing the general is just the same actor that plays Jigsaw. And so I always want to be like, President Bartlett, I want to play a game. Every time I think of that little moment, it's such a weird little, just TV is weird. The other like really whoa moment is the guy that plays Phil Coulson in the MCU is the president's advisor from the FBI.
Oh my god.
And so it's just fucking Phil Coulson walking around the White House talking about like secret agent shit, which is kind of funny.
Could this be canon?
Yeah, so I know. Yeah, there we go. Fucking is the West Wing canon to the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Chew on that one, motherfuckers, because they've got like 4 alternate presidents, which is weird. They've got like a stand-in for Carter and Bush Sr. and Reagan and stuff. It's weird. But no, wait, I think Reagan... Yeah, Reagan was the one president they didn't replace that they really should have given the time period. But like they're like, no, Reagan's too important. We need to keep Reagan, but we can fucking lose Carter.
They're playing favorites.
That show was weird. Sorry. This isn't a review of West Wing. Though maybe one day. Anyway. So yeah, like, I don't know, I feel like you could do some interesting stuff with commentary on torture porn. The weird thing is, horror has gotten so meta since we've gotten out of the torture porn genre that I don't know what you'd do if you tried to make it more modern. We've gotten a lot more variety, and things have just gotten a lot more metatextual. Probably in part because of films like this. You know?
Mm-hmm. I can definitely see that.
Like, there's not really a style of horror anymore, necessarily, that just has a list of tropes like torture porn and slashers did.
I guess the biggest one you could go for, like, if you just want to talk about what's the most prevalent, would be like the Paranormal Activities and like the nuns and like possession demon movies seem to be the more, like, hauntings seem to be the in for like the 2010s-ish.
Yeah, I guess.
You can do something funny with that.
Conjuring. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm just like, that feels... It doesn't feel as prevalent as torture porn did to me. And maybe it's just because I haven't been as interested in that side of horror. I guess the thing that's really taken off with horror is the found footage style of things, which would fit the mold for this franchise if it were to become one a lot better than it would anything else, I suppose. Because, yeah, your Paranormal Activity, but, like, even The Conjuring had moments of, like, we're filming this or we're doing this for posterity kind of things. It had moments to use the found footage thing and kind of lean into it. At least I think it did. I feel like it did. I can't remember that movie super well, but I'm like 70% on that one. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like other really popular horror movies from the last couple of years. Yeah, I guess the hauntings are pretty much your biggest bet right there. You might be right.
I mean, I think that'd be.
I'll never admit fully that you're right.
I mean, you already said it, so it's on record. I could just edit in post and then make it so you actually just say you take out the maybe. You are right.
You are right, Alfie. I am suck.
Your dick is 50 big. Just like it just doesn't really flow well, but we go for it anyway. I like one of those things I feel like really like. Okay, if you want to make this like a trilogy, I think you can do a very good. Okay, so this movie plays. He gets up off the hospital or the autopsy room thing, and he's like, okay, either he still tries to go after Taylor, and maybe you do it where like Taylor is in prison, and then he makes the prison the Saw type like puzzle game, or something like that, depending on how far you want to go of how capable he is. Or he goes after someone else, or you do the idea you had where maybe he even goes after like there's another character you introduce who is like the Saw model. The Jigsaw type character, and they maybe like go against each other, against tropes and stuff. That could be fun. You get that for like movie 2, and then at the end of movie 2 you have another like, oh, he's dead fake out, and then at the start of movie 3 you could do the possession thing where like, oh, he really did die in the second one and now he's haunting someone, and then maybe like halfway through you reveal, oh no, he's still alive, but this is how he's been making it seem like he's a ghost.
Yeah. I could definitely see it. It could be cool. I don't know. Part of the thing for me is I think it works as a really good, complete message and love letter to the slasher genre of horror, which is not something I particularly love. Like, I'm not super into slashers, but this does... It's that getting to see it through the eyes of another thing, right? Like... I really like Freddy Krueger, and he almost doesn't feel at home among the other slashers sometimes. He's weird in that way, because Freddy's got such, like, this fun imagery kind of thing going for him that the others don't. You know, Jason's got to find creative ways to kill people, which, again, necessitated circumstances to be so ridiculous to the point where, what if Jason, like, stuck someone's head in liquid nitrogen? Where the fuck are we gonna get Jason around liquid nitrogen? We'll send him to the future. I mean, you laugh, but that's legitimately the movie, Alfie.
I know. I know Jason X is the best film of all time.
Yeah,
He beats someone to
let's
death
go
with a
that
fucking
one.
sleeping bag.
I know. So, like, it's just... I'm getting to see it through the eyes of someone else. I think it's a really strong statement in that way, and I don't know if you might be able to do interesting things with the sequel, but it becomes that question of, does it warrant one, or would doing more just kind of tarnish the original, you know?
Yeah, I feel you there. This does definitely give off the air, like, again, the way I found it and how people have been talking about it. I can totally see why this has become like a cult classic, where this is, once you know it, most people are like, oh, this is really great, but it's one of those things that isn't super marketable. So I can see why it didn't become like a big hit. But it's one of those like ideas where you can watch it, you can have like a full experience of, oh, this was a very unique thing, and the moment you make a sequel to it, it does kind of devolve. Well, it's not that unique one-off movie that you can pop in, because maybe this one's doing a different thing and such like that. But I at least feel that although the haunting thing is like the more iffy one we're on, because we did kind of just make that up trying to think of like what else they could do, the fact that the director has said they're very happy with the script they have got of the torture porn one, I'd at least want it to like get released online eventually so people could read it, because I think that'd be an interesting, like, this character, he's almost scary when he doesn't have the mask on because of the performance. Now I'll say that definitely he is scary when he has got the mask on, because he's such a like when you're hanging out with him, and you just get those moments of like, ha 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 ha. He's like in the magic card trick and stuff like that. He's unsociable. He's quite funny. He's quite witty and stuff like that. But he's always got that like little off thing about him. Like he pauses really long, like uncomfortable silences and stuff like that. And he gets so passionate about what he's doing that again, you kind of forget that he's talking about mass murdering because he's just so into it and he's got this childlike glee about it. That's an interesting character that you can keep going forward. So I would definitely I think at least one more would be a good idea if we ever get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's seemed to build a reputation and stuff, which is cool. My only other thing with the sequel is you'd almost... I don't really know how you get the same kind of insight and conceit, because he's not going to get another film crew to follow him, especially after he's succeeded in doing a mass murder, right? So, like, how do you get that cool, like, really introspective thing? Do you make the whole thing vlogs? Because, I mean, that could be interesting, too, but then it's not going to have... It's not necessarily going to be the same fun thing that you can play off of, right? Like as interesting as his whole speeches and his whole suppositions about why this kind of trope for a character is so emotionally interesting, yada. The fun part of it is the part of the fun of those scenes is when he's like bouncing it off of Taylor, and he's like, that is my penis. And she's like, oh, come on, really? And he's like, no, I'm serious. The phallic imagery is very intentional. You know, no one pops one of these killers with a little snub-nosed pistol. It's always a big, strong rod. And, like, that's a really funny scene, but it is really succeeding in making the point, though. And I find that interesting. So I don't know... I just don't know how you do that side of things again. I guess, and that's the thing that really makes it unique.
Yeah, you set it in real time, so it's been 10 years plus after. You give him a pupil, give him like someone who wants to learn, who maybe is like, oh no, I don't want to be a slasher, I want to do the torture porn thing. He's like, yeah, I guess alright, I'll help you, and then you can get their dynamics of now he's the older figure, not obviously still quite young, but the seasoned one he's had a win. He's had the legend, and people do know Leslie Vernon now after his success, and now someone else is trying to do something. You can get an interesting back and forth of almost like two horror nerds arguing about which way is better. That could be a fun dynamic as they're like actually, then you cut back from their like talking behind a screen and then like having this very casual conversation. You cut forward, it's like the most graphic, someone's legs in a vice scene and like, help, and it cuts away. It's like, did you have to put it in the vice? Do you have a scary mask or anything you can put on? Why do I need to show up? He's in a torture device. Yeah, but like it's the personal connection.
I mean, it's just so, like, the tape, really? Yeah, I could see that. That's maybe a good way to look at it, as kind of the passing the torch thing. That's interesting. I don't know. It's definitely got potential. I don't want to say that it doesn't, but, again, I question how much it could be worthwhile. But if the director and the people behind it really have the passion for it, then I do think it's worthwhile to go that way. The only problem is, like, my joke has always been, two things have a billion sequels, and it's horror movies and pornos. And it's shocking how much those two share.
There's your phallic imagery.
It's like, yeah, really, right? And, a lot of the time, what it is, like, I'll use Nightmare on Elm Street again. Sorry, I fucking love that franchise. But, like, what happens is the first one has no fucking budget whatsoever, and then it just really latches onto a zeitgeist and takes off and makes so much money relative to its budget that it doesn't even have to perform really well, like blockbuster level for a film, because as long as it's tripling, quadrupling its budget over and over and over again, it's one of the most profitable movies. Like, again, Paranormal Activity is one of the most profitable movies of all time because its budget was so damn low. And you know, very similar thing happened with Nightmare on Elm Street, and so they started spinning it off into sequel, and they got not necessarily progressively worse, but they did start to dive in quality at a certain point. And that's just kind of the way it goes, because what happens is they become money-making tools and they lose the passion. And so I don't think that would happen here. I don't think that if you make a sequel to this, it's going to lose the passion. And so maybe my worry about, is it worth making a sequel to, or is it just going to kind of tarnish the original, probably wouldn't be there, because if you were to do this, it necessitates a passion that, like, you couldn't phone in a sequel to this. You know, it needs passion, otherwise it's just not going to be done.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really good point for, like, the situation this is in.
Yeah, I mean, 2017 was the last time they said anything about it. I'll be a pessimist and say they'll probably never make a sequel, but hey, I'm always willing to be surprised.
Yeah, I feel you there. Again, it's one of those things I thought was worth a mention, but at this point, I think the boat sailed on that one, unless this gets like a massive... Unless this video is what signals, you know what? By God, they're right. We should do it.
I'll show that Sid Part 2.
Fuck him.
Man, yeah. Alright. You know, funny enough, this could have just been a topic on fan film reviews, because it's basically one. Alright. Do you have anything else about this movie you want to talk about, or you want to go ahead and go on to ratings?
Overall, that's basically it. I guess I could say, how did you feel just in general with... Again, I'm straining for points, so probably not. No, I think ratings is fine.
Okay. I'll go first. I really did enjoy this. I was very surprised by it. Again, but it does have its moments that do feel a little weaker and do feel like they kind of just wrote themselves into a corner a little bit and just felt they needed to do the trope more. So I'm going to give this 4 out of 5 pet turtles that I can eat.
These guys just won't die. Yeah, I'm feeling you there as well. It was something that I was curious about and very happy it wasn't a stinker. It's by no means something that's suddenly jumped up to one of my favourite things of all time, but it's definitely something I could see me watching again. It's more up my alley. I like mockumentaries, and I like this kind of tone where it says something about the genre while still also living in the genre. So I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 long, hard Sid Part 2s.
Okay. Alright. Well, Manos picked our review for next week, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head.
But
I'm bad at this.
if you go and watch that last video now,
host.
so you can actually go give that some more views. So go watch that, go to the end, find out what Manos said, and now you know what's going to be next week.
Yeah. There's something like
X-Men.
some of the B. I can't fucking remember. We're doing another one next week. We'll fucking be there. All right. Thanks everyone for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I'm a geek for fun.
Oh no! Fuck! Every time, fuck! Back it up! And until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And we are a geek for fun.
Okay, Venom. And we are your ghouly gentlemen, and we will be dissecting things.